Thank you for tuning in to Koppen with Comic. I'm Brian Koppen with comic Hannah Lieberman. Hannah Lieberman, how the hell are you?
I am doing great. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you so much for coming on. The only reason why we have you on is because you're supposed to be funny. I mean, like,
Oh God.
who was singing your praises? There was it? Oh my gosh, Kate Hester, and who's the other one? She just got married to the other comic. I've had two comics on that got married, and that was Matt Dietz and Kristen Seltman.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, so they both were like,
watching
oh
these
my gosh, she was the
episodes.
funniest one there.
And like one of these things is not like the other because I've been watching these episodes and they're all like, that's when I did my 7th solo show. And I'm like, I've been killing these open mics. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah. I don't know why I had to be like Kermit the Frog to explain my imposter syndrome, but glad to be here.
I think that's the best voice for it, right?
Absolutely.
But we also
Someday
follow her
we'll find
HannahLieberman.com, HannahLieberman.com, but also Hannah Except Backwards, which is hilarious.
You know, I did not realize how difficult it would be to say my handle out loud. It was very funny on paper. And then you say Hannah Except Backwards, and people are like, isn't that just Hannah? And I'm like, so you get it.
Yeah, so that's, I love that. So you get it, and yet you're not laughing.
And yet, I do a lot of jokes like that.
And so what we're going to talk about real quick is, first of all, this is crazy because I hate fucking games, but you're a nationally ranked competitive Scrabble player. And I feel like people in my family, like they bring out games and I'm just like, fuck. Like it really is something you should do competitively. Like, can you see my point where it's like, it's not fun? Like, because I'm losing.
It sounds like you're bad at Scrabble.
Yes.
No, so here's the thing. People are always like, oh my gosh, my family and I play so much. And like, I love words and I was an English major, but the top Scrabble players are like the math kids, you know, like it is a strategy game. It's a game of probability more than anything else, she said sexily. And
but
like
how is that so? Because you have to think about like what's going to land where on the board or what?
Oh yeah. Oh, so a guy won nationals a few years ago who didn't even speak English. He just assigned each letter a number and memorized code. So it's like and that's how he memorized the dictionary. It's all about probability and the leave on your rack and playing offensively and defensively and knowing what's left in the bag. Like it's a mind game.
Oh, left in the bag. Like, do you think it should start being harder? Like, you know, so card counters and stuff are subjected to like several decks at a time. Like how many decks are left in the shoe is like their version of how many letters are left in the bag, but it's like decks of cards.
I think the difference is like with Scrabble, so you're encouraged to track. You have all the tiles and you cross them out as they're played.
Yeah.
I've had so many games where I've won on the end game where I'm like seeing that my opponent has an eye and there's only 2 places to get rid of an eye. So if I slowly knock out those 2 places, then I'll have more end game. It's like it's a very deep strategic game. And actually last year, and I just got invited back for this year, I was the color commentator for school Scrabble nationals.
Is that on TV or something?
It was, yeah. Well, I mean, it was like a Twitch thing, but it was like, you would never, awesome. It was like my ESPN career was taking off. Like it was going to be a totally different person. I was like
the spelling bee was on TV. So is this going to be a huge thing?
Yeah. I was on ESPN2 once when I was in 6th grade, introducing a commercial break for school Scrabble nationals. So your fans might already recognize me from that.
And now you're the voice of it. That's amazing.
It was awesome. And I have to tell you, I don't know who that person was. Like I'd be like, that's right. Thank you, Will. We see those 2 kids from Montana, and we know they know their Tissane plus a blank. Will they remember what 3s? Take that S hook, leave that triple lane open. Back to you, Will. I was like, who is this?
Are you serious? Like you're saying, like you introducing it back in the day, or you now? It sounds like
me
you're
now.
speaking.
I do. It's at the Planet Word Museum, which is in DC. It's like this whole etymology themed museum, and which like I was like, I'm getting married here, this is amazing. And then I got to be like on camera with each game, like analyzing, and then kids' parents would come up and like shake my hand afterwards and be like, oh my gosh, we've been watching your stream. Like
no, so like the thing you just said, that long sentence full of just complicated jargon, is that pretty much you color commenting this competition?
Yeah, the whole thing is jargon. I mean, we tried to like lower it down so people who are newer to Scrabble can understand what we're saying. But like when I said Tissane plus a blank, there are 3 common bingo stems. A bingo is when you play all 7 letters, you get 50 extra points.
Okay.
And so retina, tisane, and satire are all 6-letter words. And if you add a blank to that, you have like a bajillion bingos. So like, give me a letter other than Y, Z, or Q.
T.
T. So tisane plus a T, satinette. I can do this. It might just be satinette. I'm thinking of it.
So those 3 words can all be turned into something like whatever letter you use other than those 3 will turn into a word if you have a blank.
Yep.
Oh my Lord. So I mean, I guess a huge question is, how the fuck did you get into this? And then the other question is, at what point did you realize, like, oh no, like everybody else is like not taking this seriously enough. I take it super seriously. And I found these people who also take it super seriously. These are my people.
So
and then
actually,
the same thing with comedy. How do you find,
okay,
I'm taking comedy
I came
very
into
seriously.
it the opposite way, because my mom plays, and then my brother, so school Scrabble, you play with a partner, and his partner dropped out at the last minute. And so I just got roped into being in this national tournament. I was not good at Scrabble. I was like a 5th grader. And there's this great clip, because we're these 2 like cherubic, freckly little redheads. So the Today shows, of course, used like a little clip of us when they were doing a little story on it. And the clip is just, I whisper something to my brother, and then he whispers back to me, "No, Hannah, that's stupid." And that's what's on air. That was like my national TV debut.
Did they hear that, or did they just see that?
Oh, you can see him mouth it perfectly.
That's stupid. No, Hannah, that's stupid.
No, Hannah, that's stupid. So
at some point you're like, no, I'm actually good at this though. I got roped in, but now I'm actually really good at
this. I'm honestly not that, like, could I kick your average kitchen table player's ass? Yes. And I don't even know my tisane plus a blank, because I forgot in state for tisane plus T. But the point is, I'm good at Scrabble, but part of it's because I've been playing so long. So I've been playing since I'm like 12. So there are a lot of Scrabble players who like knew me as a 12-year-old and then see me now and they're like, she has boobs. Like it's, but I have a whole stand-up bit. I mean, first off, Scrabble tournaments, as I'm sure you can imagine, are just like an ambrosia salad of comic material. They are the breeding ground for so many bits.
Okay, because are the people unique or no?
I am one of the least nerdy and sanest people who play Scrabble, and that should scare you. It's a lot of, I mean, honestly, it's nice. It's a good community for people. It's a lot of people on the spectrum. My mom always says like the brain cells dedicated to Scrabble aren't going to like personal hygiene or any sense of self-awareness. I have a whole stand-up bit about how Scrabble tournaments are great for self-esteem, because when you win, you're like, I'm so smart. And then when you lose, you're like looking around the quality in ballroom B and you're like, maybe I wanted life.
You're like, I'm actually really cool. Yeah, I'm not stupid.
You're like, I never feel sexier than at Scrabble tournament. But being the sexiest Scrabble player is like being, the least depressed comic. It's not not a super high bar, but we take our wins, man.
So do you actually like find your people in comedy too then?
Oh,
I mean, because they're much, I guess, like they probably have the same thing where some of them could be on the spectrum, I suppose. Some of them might not be great with. Yeah, some of them might not be great with people. So what are you finding about the different communities who flock to each one?
I mean, for comedy, especially starting out as a young woman, I've definitely like clung to the other young women that I see doing this because it is a unique experience. I mean, I started hosting open mics for a few different companies, and I came home to my boyfriend one day and I was like, oh my God, I think incels are a real problem. I think people just hate women. And he was like, honey, that's called selection bias. That's
okay. Wow.
That's
so you noticed the material at what the company open mic was actually with sexist?
Oh, a lot of these open mics it's just, I think guys trying to be subversive or like, they're like, what do I offer that's unique as another white man doing comedy? And they're like, I'll just be extra non-PC. But
but they're doing that at a company open mic though?
No.
Oh, okay.
I've been doing open mics for different comedy companies, like different
comedy companies.
groups. Okay. I don't know what the word is. I'm still there's still a lot of jargon where I am you listening to Scrabble talk is the equivalent of piecing together comedy. It's hard because, I have a lot of friends who like went to med school and then they get their residency and then the internship and then they're doctors. And with comedy, it's like, I don't know, make TikToks. Like there's no like clear path of this is how you do this, and there's also no one giving you A's, which I love. I'm like, damn it.
I love
Tell me
A's.
I'm doing this right.
Well, it sounds like you are. I mean, if everybody else is saying you're doing it, like if other comics are saying you're doing a good job, that should mean something, right?
Big sigh of relief. Thank you. I'm gonna sleep so well tonight.
But
No,
I mean,
I
if they didn't, like, how else would you know other than crowd laughs? And you're getting those probably.
yeah, I mean, part of it's like, it's hard to know what's worth investing in. And something that's hard with comedy is like, I think we're already prone to being self-conscious. And then with comedy, it's like, you have to believe in, God, that sounded really cheesy, but you have to believe in yourself. Like, you have to be the biggest advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
And so any self-doubt that you have is just going to be this cycle of like more self-doubt, more self-doubt. You're not going to go for things. I mean, I've had like a lot of shows that I had absolutely no business being on just out of pure like chutzpah.
Right on.
Which
and
is
how'd you do at those shows, and what do you notice about your fellow comics at those shows?
I mean, I did even like with meeting Kate Hester, she's such a lovely person in addition to terrific comic, and she kind of like put out a cold call on a Facebook group, and I only had one 5-minute video at the time, but I was like, well, that's what she's getting, and I got to do one of her shows. But I feel like I've become such a better comic over this whole journey just from watching other people perform so much.
Yeah, what are you noticing about their stuff that you're like, oh, I do that well, or I got to get better at that?
Definitely, I think the biggest thing I've learned is that people really have a brand for themselves. I am like very undeniably like violently me, so I don't really have a choice, but at least like embrace that brand, right? Like it's like nerdy manic pixie dream girl wannabe type. That's like I know who I always describe myself as like a Muppet who's gentrifying Sesame Street. Like I'm self-aware, but I see a lot of people where I'm like, oh, they have a very clear, like before they say anything, you kind of know what kind of comedy you think they're going to be doing, and they just have very clear voices. Versus like at some of these open mics, or when I see people who haven't like developed honed the craft as much, I'm like, ooh, I could pick any person out of the crowd and say they probably did that set too. Like, you know, it's not unique to them. So,
but did you start out so like, I mean, because it really takes a little bit of self-awareness to know, or experience to know that that's what works. Like certain jokes will get laughs coming out of your mouth, but not somebody else's mouth, because you look a certain way, you talk a certain way, so they're going to believe certain material.
Yeah.
So I mean, were you always knowledgeable that was the way to do it? Did you ever kind of flail around like some of those people at open mics?
I don't know that I mean, I'm certainly not here to say that I understood comedy right out the gate, but I moved up to New York for acting school. And I think the biggest thing I took away from that was, one, acting school costs a lot of money. No, I think the biggest takeaway I took away from that was like, in trying to figure out what performances I liked and why, I always knew which ones I liked. I couldn't ever quite figure out why. And then I realized it was just about authenticity and like honesty and vulnerability. That's to me what makes a really good actor and really good performance. And I think the same thing applies to comedy. And it can seem like that's not true because we're like, you know, doing punchlines and gimmicks and not necessarily telling the truth, right? We're like embellishing stories or putting on fronts. But I think at the end of the day, we do really value authenticity in performance, even when it's stand-up comedy, and maybe like, especially when it's stand-up comedy. And so I try to like, I don't know, I've done a lot of like free therapy through open mics, you know, like I try and just like, how many cheesy phrases am I allowed per podcast? Because if I speak my truth right now, is that gonna like, am I kicked out?
No, please do. Yeah, in the last episode, me and this dude talked about one of the horses of the apocalypse named resiliency, and how resiliency is big in comedy, and he talked all about resiliency in comedy. So please get all the inspirational.
That reminds me of this quote from Aristotle. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think it's like, I'm trying to be authentic to myself. But again, that self-doubt thing is hard because I'm like, well, this is how I want to do comedy. And then I'm looking around like, but is this how you do comedy, guys? Am I doing it? Give me an A. Do you love me?
Yeah, but I think that's true. But I mean, if you were looking at somebody else and you were like, I want to be, Nikki Glazer or some, Schlesinger,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love her. I love her.
Yeah.
But like, if you start out doing it her way, that's wrong. So no, I think if you're being authentic, people can tell because it's credible coming out of your mouth.
I
But
think
yeah.
like the best compliment I've ever gotten was after like my first performance. A friend of mine who was there said everyone else looked like they were doing impressions of other comics and you were just you. And I do
Oh,
not know
good.
if he meant it as a compliment, but I took it that way because I was like, even if I sucked, at least it was like a unique suck.
Yeah. Oh no, I think Matt Ruby said back in the day, he was like, he's just a New York comedian, and he said, if you can't be funny, be interesting. And I guess
Oh
the
yeah.
part, because then people will continue to listen. And if they continue to listen and don't tune you out and look at their phones, they're going to hear something funny eventually.
Yeah. I mean, the goal is that they hear something funny throughout, but again, we take our wins where we get them.
So, I mean, I guess that's cool because you value authenticity in acting and you brought that into comedy. But are you finding material like, I would think that the material can be kind of limiting because it all has to come from you. And so you really have to live
I
these
mean,
things. And so it's Scrabble, but also things like flat earth, right?
well, oh, absolutely. So first off, like the Scrabble is definitely uniquely me, but I also feel like you can be authentically observing the world, right? Like
Yeah.
observational humor can still come from an authentic place.
Yeah.
Like I talk a lot about politics. I talk a lot about just like being a young woman who's like on birth control and getting UTIs and all that jazz. And um,
All that jazz.
the
I love
huge.
it.
I had
Yeah, I
a
love it. UTIs and all that jazz. That should be the name of your album. That'll be a big
I always say UTI is the sexy tract infection. Yeah. Anywho, I do a lot of just talking about my real life. I'm always like, if I'm not making this material funny, then it's just sad. So I might as well get something out of living this embarrassing in existence.
Well,
But
are
what you
you?
were mentioning about the
Yeah.
flat earth is like I just recently was doing a whole set about conspiracy theorists. My boyfriend, he's on this flat earthers dating page on Facebook.
That's messed
I always
up.
say,
And
does it bother me?
you guys are doing it for fun, right? Because
That's what
last thing
he
you want is him
says.
to hook up
It's
with
a
a
little
big.
worrisome. That's what he says. And it's so, I mean, if Scrabble tournaments are this like well of material, the flat earthers singles
Yes.
dating page on Facebook is just the material writes itself. I feel like I'm cheating.
Yeah,
Um,
that's funny. I feel like I'm cheating. When you
yeah, and
find your.
like they
Yeah.
call people who believe in science, they call them globe heads, which I'm just like
Ah.
is not a great insult because heads are meant to be spherical. It's a good jab at like, hey Arnold, but it's
How
and
many?
they're
I have to know
all
how many there are. How many people are on this dating page? There
oh
can't be
god,
many.
I'd have to look it up, but it's a big community. I would say a community around the globe, but that's kind of it's and because he's on it, he gets these messages that are like he got someone asking him to invest in med beds, which is like
Ah.
it's these medical beds that keep like rich elite Jews in power forever, I guess. And oh my God, they're just hilarious. I'm like, first of all, Jews, we don't live long because of med beds. It's spite. We live long purely out of spite. Like, you think Ruth Bader Ginsburg wanted to stick around that long? Your
But that,
spite.
but that's cool because I mean the scamsters have infiltrated. They're like these people are easy marks.
It's true, but also kind of alarming that they believe my boyfriend is like easy pickings. I'm
He's
like,
playing the
wow,
part too well. Yeah. Are you sure?
yeah,
Does this make you think
methinks he
twice about
doth
your boyfriend?
protest too much. Yeah, no, you know, I always think that with devil's advocates too, because all these guys, when they do these like heinous things in open mics, they're always like, I'm just playing devil's advocate. And I'm like, at what point are you not playing?
Yeah.
What point are we method acting devil's advocate? Like they are taking on that role.
Yeah. Is there anything that you can tell those people? Like, I mean, do you feel like, okay, I'm hosting this open mic. I'd really love to say one sentence to this guy to make, because I think he seems like he has a stage presence. His
Yeah.
jokes are punchy, but they're just not authentic to him. Do you ever like
So
think you could
first
say
of
something to him?
all, I do say those sentences because I'm hosting the mics and fuck it. So I've never been a demure person. But what I would say is like you have funny things to say. You just have to be brave enough to say them.
Yeah.
I think it's like you can go for the easy laugh. I don't know. I feel a little disingenuous, like doling out comedy advice, given that I'm such a noob. But like, um, like they have unique things to say, so say them because I
Yeah.
don't walk away thinking like that was a really interesting take about females. I just walk away like, well, that guy was a dick.
Yeah. And it's just like, stop. Like, you're a funny guy. You don't need to be an edgelord too. Like they
Exactly.
just all think like, oh, we're just going to be on the right wing edge
There
lord
are
circuit.
more comedic media out there than just like Andrew Tate's podcast. Like you
Yeah.
can find a different space.
Even
You know,
Rogan. I don't
and
think
like,
Rogan's not always like that either. Just like with certain guests, he's a dick, but on other, he can be slightly
yeah,
interesting when the guest
I
is
mean, look,
interesting.
and I definitely do that whole like code switching thing where I sometimes I'm like, wow, I'm such a dork. I'm just gonna get on stage and pretend I'm gritty for a second. But
Yeah.
those sets never go as well, you know? I think the people want Scrabble.
Yeah. But that's so fun. They want Scrabble. They want to hear about my Today Show experience.
You
Well,
know what? A
first,
lot
yeah,
of people like also people like to say they don't like puns, but there are some jokes where I'm like, people are so proud of themselves for getting it that they'll laugh just
oh
to be like, haha,
no,
I
gosh,
too understood.
Did you become an actor because of your Today Show triumph?
Yeah, I got addicted to fame. I'm a deep attention whore, and I was like, next time I want to call someone else stupid. So that was yeah, no,
Was that your brother who said that?
yeah, that was my brother. I
Have
mean,
you gotten
I come
back at
from
your
a very
brother?
like, sorry.
Have you gotten back at your brother?
I got back at him by being uh underemployed female comic in New York City. Take that, my brother, who's running for local office.
Oh no, is he?
No, he's great. Actually, my brother
Oh,
is probably like he's so supportive of my comedy
good.
career. And
He's
my
got
whole
to be, or
family,
else you can make fun of him on stage. You're the person with
I
the microphone
know.
now.
We did this whole like role reversal thing where my parents were like, pursue your dreams. And I was like, what about law school? Like we did this weird little switcheroo. Um, but I'm like, it's been nice. It's the new year. I don't know when this is going to air, but like right now it just turned to 2023. And it's nice to look back on the last year and like note the things that I did. And when you add them all up, I'm like, okay, Hannah from a year ago would be like, hey, you kind of know how comedy works now. And I'm
Yeah.
sure Hannah a year from now will be like, no, the fuck you didn't. But
I
it's,
love that when you add it all up. Yeah, it's a Costanza thing. When you add it all up, it seems decent. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Jerry's like, how did you get an apartment and get a job? He's like, I don't know, they're done. He's like, when you add it all up, it looks decent.
Right, yeah.
But like, I did go to law school. I was a lawyer, and I prefer to talk to Hannah Lieberman. So we
So there
follow
you
her.
have it.
Yeah, we follow We follow her everywhere. She's Hannah except backwards on Instagram, HannahLieberman.com, and I'm begging her. I mean, she hates Elon Musk, I guess, so she won't get a Twitter account, but I'm begging her to get on there so I can retweet all her funny stuff.
All right. Thanks, man.
But Hannah Lieberman, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.